Welcome to week 2 of our message series, Open-Handed. We're taking a few weeks to dive into the amazing gifts that God wants to offer us and how we can actually go about receiving those gifts. If you stretch out your hands like someone's about to give you a present, that's the posture of receiving. Our hands need to be open, outstretched toward God, in order to receive all that He has in store for us. It's not as easy as it looks. It's simple, but it's rarely easy. And that's why we're taking this series to break that down. This week, we're talking about becoming empty. It may seem like a diversion, but it's actually an essential aspect of this. In fact, I'll go on to say that you cannot receive everything that God is trying to offer you unless you master the art of becoming empty, of emptying yourself. Let's try this. Picture yourself holding on to a lot of items. Maybe you're balancing your keys, your groceries, your cell phone, a jacket, a diaper bag, an umbrella, and any other sort of items that you might be juggling. Got that? You're holding on to all this stuff. And then I ask you to hold on to something for me. That might be overwhelming, right? And what if that something from me is valuable or even fragile? Kind of hard to balance all those things, right? Friends, oftentimes we crowd our lives and our hearts with a lot of stuff, a lot of noise and a lot of junk and a lot of heavy things. Those are all the things that we're trying to balance to the point where we often can't even notice that God is offering something greater. Or we are so overburdened already that we can't take His gift into our arms or into our hearts. Jesus Himself spoke about this, and we see it in today's gospel. He talks about different things that we have to empty ourselves out of in order to make room to receive God's grace and His gifts. He starts out by saying this: "Whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me." So the first thing that Jesus addresses here is relationships, and some of the most important relationships in our lives to boot. It's important to look at what Jesus is not saying here, though. Jesus is not saying, don't love and cherish your children. He isn't saying, don't listen to and honor your parents. He isn't saying, don't care about your family. Not at all. What He is saying is that when those relationships, or any relationship for that matter, becomes more important than your relationship with God, well, then you're in dangerous territory. God should come first. And I get it. Putting God first and following His will isn't always easy, or it's not going to be a popular choice, even when it comes to those closest to us and to our family members. Many of us will face this choice in our lives over and over again. And that's why Jesus feels that it's so important to address it here. We need to empty our hearts of the desire to please people, to be a people pleaser, so that we can be most concerned about pleasing God and with doing the right thing. The second thing we need to empty ourselves of is addressed by St. Paul in today's second reading. He says this: "If we have died with Christ, we believe that we will also live with Him. So you must also consider yourselves dead to sin and alive in God." So we must empty ourselves of sin. And you would think that this one is obvious. After all, good and evil are opposites. Naturally, it's more difficult to nurture good habits and grow in virtue when you're not addressing the habitual sins and the vices that you're holding on to. We often, friends, find comfort in those sinful or selfish routines. I don't know why, but we just do. It's extremely uncomfortable to look at and to admit. But all of us fall into these things because we've let them become patterns, rituals, and little comforts that we've convinced ourselves are okay, even though we know that they're anything but okay. And in fact, they can be quite harmful for us. Jesus says, do the hard work that it takes to put that sin to death. Whoever does not take up their cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Now, Jesus won the first true victory over sin on the cross. And everyone who calls themselves a Christian must do the same thing with whatever sins have crept into their lives or into their hearts. So you must empty yourself of sin in order to make room to receive God's growth and God's grace. You must put sin to death in order to make room for new life. Sin has to die in order that we might stand up and walk in new life. Jesus continues, whoever finds their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life for my sake will find it. Here, Jesus is essentially saying that if you're living for yourself, thinking only about yourself and trying to find yourself, you're going to lose out. Everything, absolutely everything in this life is temporary. Your career, your clothes, your house, and yes, even your relationship with the people you love. All of that is temporary in this earthly life. So you need to empty yourself of attachment to these earthly things, not because they're bad, but because God is so much more better than all of that. To find yourself is good. To have a successful career is good. Nothing wrong with that. To foster solid relationships is good. But their benefit sort of ends when your life does. The benefit of finding Christ, however, doing successful work for Him, and fostering a solid, strong relationship with Him will have you reaping eternal benefits, which is just a better long-term investment of your energy and of your time, honestly. So what are your arms full of? What holds back your heart from being able to receive all that the Father has to give to you? What's crowding out His voice? While it's difficult to do, there is no greater freedom than shedding the burdens and the dead weight and to stretch your empty arms open wide. Because our emptiness will always be filled with God's grace and His love. And I can assure you, that is much, much lighter for us to carry.